And advocates are demanding action after an asylum seeker died after spending hours in the lobby of a shelter in Mississauga, Ontario last weekend. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick is following this story. So Megan, community leaders speaking about this morning, some pretty harsh words from those advocates. What did they say?
Yeah, and they shared a few details about the woman. So what we know of her so far, Linda, is that her first name was Delphina and she was from Kenya. And she had just arrived in Canada a few days before her death. From what we understand, she came to the Toronto area last Thursday. And these advocates saying from the information they have, she was 46 years old and she had 4 children who are back in Kenya. They say she went to this shelter in Mississauga early Saturday afternoon and it was full. The woman ended up waiting outside in the cold for hours, and then the shelter staff did let her come in around 8 p.m. Saturday evening and allowed her to sleep overnight in the lobby. Now, what happened next is some kind of medical emergency suffered by the woman on Sunday. She was taken to the hospital and she died there. Now, we have no information, Linda, about the cause of death or any other details about the nature of the medical incident, medical issue that happened on Sunday. The advocates saying they are sad to be having this kind of news conference, to be grieving the loss of this woman's life, saying she came here to Canada for a better life and she didn't even get started here starting out that new life. Some of these community leaders are calling on all levels of government, but particularly the federal government, to step up and provide some funding, ensure that refugee claimants who come here to Canada are properly housed, properly cared for. A few months ago, this issue was in the headlines a lot because of some refugee claimants who were sleeping on the sidewalk here in Toronto outside of an intake center, a shelter intake center. And in the wake of that, a lot of churches and faith groups have opened their doors and created makeshift shelters to house these people. And they say this is not a long-term sustainable solution. Listen to one of the advocates.
The blood is on your hands. Yes. You have traumatized the staff. That's what you have done. And because you've traumatized them, you don't even understand, because you sit in your fancy offices that we voted you into, and you've forgotten that you work for us. We don't work for you. And because you have a misunderstanding of the level of trust that we have placed in you, and you've dropped the ball, and we're trying to pick it up because we said we would stand on guard for Canada as well.
So she's not putting any blame on the shelter where this woman stayed on Saturday night, firmly putting the blame, Linda, on the doorstep of the federal government and other elected leaders. Some of the other advocates saying this is not just a problem that's happening in Mississauga or in the Toronto area, but across Canada, and it requires a national response.
And Megan, you know, some strong words there, as we said, and certainly trying to get their point there to the various levels of government, specifically the federal government. Have we heard anything from the federal government or the province, the municipality here regarding this tragedy? Yeah, the federal government has provided a statement, Linda, spokesperson, saying that they're deeply saddened to hear the news about the death of this individual at the shelter in Mississauga. Our hearts go out to the family. And they added that the federal government has provided $10 million to Peel region, which includes the city of Mississauga and also Brampton, for an interim housing program. But we heard from other levels of government today, including Ontario Premier Doug Ford and Patrick Brown, the mayor of Brampton. They were doing a joint news conference today on housing funding. Doug Ford calling on the federal government, saying this is the federal government's responsibility. Immigration is a federal jurisdiction. And Patrick Brown saying something similar and calling news of this woman's death heartbreaking. Here's more from Patrick Brown.
It's heartbreaking. I had the chance to visit with a lot of the asylum claimants when the surge started in the summer, and we warned the federal government, with mild temperatures, warm temperatures in the summer. As soon as it got cold, it was going to become a humanitarian disaster. I met some African asylum claimants, and it's by and large almost all from Africa who are in this predicament. And I met some of these asylum claimants in November, and they were asking me, does it get colder?
Brown said he's actually going to be meeting with the federal immigration minister next week. And he said, Linda, he plans on highlighting that this is called, in his words, a humanitarian crisis.
Thanks for this, Megan. CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick in Toronto.